4K at 120 Hz and HDMI 2.1 are all a scam in 2020, and today I'll be telling you guys why. So smack a like on this video because I'm getting to the point right now. So simply put, let's state the elephant rhino in the room. 8K is really the push for the HDMI 2.1 technology, pushing it even further than what we have, and 4K 120, but 8K really being the outlier here. But the reality is we are nowhere close to being ready for 8K, which I'll talk about at the end of this video. But the reality is when you look at 4K 120 Hz, we're also not ready for that. So if we look at movies, no movies support 4K at 120 Hz. Hell, we don't even have 4K 60 support yet. So I highly doubt we're going to get any 120 Hz support before we get 60 FPS. Now, when we talk video games, that's where things get a little interesting because the scam gets a little creative, right? So you have no locked support for 4K at 120 Hz on even as far up as the RTX 30 series graphics cards, at least at the 3080 level right now. And I think that's funny because a lot of people are talking about the brand new Call of Duty Cold War game boasting up to 120 FPS. However, what they're not telling you is that it's just an uncapped frame rate. Now, if you're a gamer and you've ever played an uncapped frame rate, you know how wonky that can be. Your mileage will vary. 1 minute you're at 70 FPS, the next you're back up to 120. It can go either way with fluctuating frames per second, and while, yeah, you might have a nice FPS, you're still going to attain an average FPS, and it's important to know what that average FPS target is. They haven't told you. They just said it can do it really well, but they are very vague as to what that really well means. That's just one part of the scam. Then introduce the fact that content providers will target 4K 60 to hit the mass majority of 4K adopters versus the niche crowd with 4K 120 displays. That puts you at an even bigger disadvantage. And we can see this on those next generation consoles if we look at what Aaron Greenberg says, where he says developers always have the flexibility in how they use the power, so a standard or common 60 FPS is not a mandate. So wait, hold on. I'm buying an HDMI 2.1 TV and you're not even mandating that you hit a baseline of 60 FPS? Why am I buying it? Oh, here's why. Because 60 FPS will be the standard output, but the architecture allows up to 120 Hz support. See, that's the part that really gets a lot of people excited and start buying these HDMI 2.1, the up to. But what people don't understand is when they use vague language like up to, instead of 120 Hz without any up to, that means that you're getting variable performance. It is not guaranteed and it is going to fluctuate. And anytime there's a fluctuation, your mileage again will vary. We can see the same thing happen over on PlayStation when we have their product manager tell you 4K at 120 Hz is interesting, but actually with next-gen consoles, the baseline performance is to hit a really good native 4K 60 performance and have that performance across many games. So the reality is they don't care about you or your HDMI 2.1 in 2020. So why are you buying it? Well, simply put, there's a lot of misinformation floating around about what the next PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X are capable of. But I hope by showing you what the product managers are saying will actually educate a little bit more people to tone that down a little bit. Because right now, it is a bit of a scam to say that you're getting 4K at 120 Hz on GPUs that are like 20 series level capable. And if you guys know anything about the RTX 20 series cards from NVIDIA, they were not capable of hitting 4K 60 locked across the board on a vast majority of games. That's where the excitement for the 3080 comes in, because those cards are more capable at doing it. And spoiler, games like Flight Simulator still break the 3080. So again, this demand for 120 Hz is just asinine, and you are not going to be seeing this, especially on those third-person open-world games that everybody has come to love so much. The reality is you better get comfortable with 4K 60 being the standard, and on open-world games, expect more 30 FPS than you'd like to see, because that's what we're looking at from a power perspective. When you talk about 4K movies, you can expect there to be a big push for 20 FPS, film grain, desaturated colors. That's just going to continue because that's what the purists like, and it's easy to export large movies that way. 4K 60 is still very demanding even in Hollywood, so good luck if you're expecting that, especially with HDR. But then that leaves the next question: what about those people who bought an 8K TV? You're in even worse shape in 2020. Without mass adoption of 4K at 60 FPS or 4K at 120 locked, what are your chances of even remotely expecting mass production of 8K content? I tell you, it's not going to be good, because the reality is, while it's the next resolution, it is still extremely demanding to do 4K workloads. I mean, go try to shoot a homemade video in 4K HDR and take it into a video editor and master it in 4K HDR. You'd need a monster of a computer to pull something like that off, and that's just 4K HDR, and 60 FPS would buckle that computer. And if you start doing 8K and expecting that to go any differently, then you're going to be let down, because the reality is that's what Hollywood's looking at. They're looking at more expensive computers that they're going to need to master these films, and they're looking at longer load times to be able to produce content in native 8K. So the reality is you're not seeing this kind of stuff anytime soon. Now, to reel it all in, I'm not saying that HDMI 2.1 has no benefits like VRR or ALLM. Great, good. If you can't switch to game mode, I guess that's something that benefits you. But honestly speaking, variable refresh rate is only really going to be popular because they know they can't hit the locked 120. And they're trying to keep you from frame tearing. But frame tearing does not prevent a jarring, noticeable difference from switching from 120 hertz down to like 90 FPS. And that's just as real as it gets. Now, again, if you're expecting more than that, have your expectations shattered, because the reality is HDMI 2.1 in 2020 is a bit of a scam and a marketing technique to get you to buy something more than the 4K 60 we have on the market right now. Because let's be real, if you really knew everything that I'm saying right now to be the fact that it is, why would you ever invest in their latest Ponzi scheme? And that's how the business works. They get you excited with marketing jargon and things you don't need and won't likely see for years to come, just for the sake of selling you the concept of future-proofing, just for when the time comes out to force you arbitrarily into upgrading into something brand new with the next marketing terms of that time period. Don't be that guy. If you really want HDMI 2.1, 48 gigabits per second, wait till next year. But honestly, I would hold off and just get a 60 FPS TV, 4K 60 FPS. You're good with that, man. You don't really have to worry. If you already have one, don't go upgrading. I see so many people trying to throw away great TVs like the Sony X930E, Sony X900E, Samsung Q8FNs. Don't throw those TVs away. Hold on to them and rock out, because you're good to go. And this isn't justifying a purchase. This is just honesty. I hope you guys appreciate it. Smack a like on this video, and if I save you some money, maybe consider subscribing, because that's what I do here. Thanks for watching the #1 brand in honesty, and until the next video, I'll see you guys later.